humble elderly woman ends up in the hospital, and a few days after returning home, a man knocks on her door. When he explains why he's there, she is left paralyzed upon discovering that Dona Marietta and Clara, inseparable friends, live their days with simplicity and joy until an incident turns everything upside down. A health scare puts everything into perspective, bringing forth questions of life and death. On a gray morning, the sun was hidden behind heavy clouds that foretold a storm. Dona Marietta, a 75-year-old woman, lived in a small wooden house in a quiet, old neighborhood. She had lost her husband many years ago and had since lived alone, supporting herself with a modest pension. Life was simple, but Dona Marietta found comfort in the small joys of daily life. She enjoyed tending her garden and chatting with the neighbors, especially Clara, her neighbor and friend. That day, Dona Marietta invited Clara over for lunch. Clara, a 50-year-old woman with 2 adult children, was a widow who dedicated some of her free time to helping her friend with daily tasks. Clara always brought a smile and positive energy, and Dona Marietta cherished her company. As they prepared a vegetable soup in the kitchen, the two talked about their lives. "Did you watch the news this morning, Clara? Another political scandal," Dona Marietta said, carefully stirring the soup. "Oh, don't even mention it, Marietta. It seems like there's something new every day." "It's hard to stay hopeful," Clara replied with a sigh. "But let's focus on the good things, like this delicious soup you're making." Dona Marietta smiled, appreciating the compliment. "Ah, Clara, you always know how to lift my spirits. I'm so glad you accepted my invitation to lunch." As they sat down at the table, the smell of vegetable soup filled the house, creating a cozy atmosphere. During lunch, however, something unexpected happened. Dona Marietta began to feel an intense pain in her chest. Her hands trembled as she placed one over her heart. Clara, noticing the change in her friend, frowned with concern. "Marietta, are you all right?" Clara asked, her voice laden with worry as she leaned in closer to observe her friend. Dona Marietta tried to smile, but the pain was too overwhelming. "I think something is wrong," she managed to say, her breath labored. Her breathing grew heavy, and it seemed as though she was struggling to stay conscious. Clara stood up immediately, grabbing her friend's hand. "Marietta, hold on. I'm calling an ambulance right now." She rushed to the phone, her heart racing. Time seemed to slow as she explained the situation to the 911 operator. The minutes that followed were agonizing. Clara returned to Marietta's side, who was now pale and sweating. "Stay with me, Marietta. The ambulance is on its way," Clara said, gripping her friend's hand, trying to provide comfort and courage. "You're strong. You'll get through this." Dona Marietta, with tears in her eyes, looked at Clara. "Thank you, my friend," she murmured, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over her body. It was as if the pain was draining her strength. Finally, the sound of the ambulance's siren broke the silence of the afternoon. The paramedics arrived quickly, entering the house with a stretcher. They worked efficiently, placing Dona Marietta on the stretcher and assessing her condition. Clara watched everything, feeling helpless and terrified. "She's conscious, but it's serious," one of the paramedics told Clara. "We'll take her to the nearest hospital. You can come with her." Clara nodded quickly. "Of course, I'll go with her." She followed the ambulance, holding Marietta's hand the entire time. During the ride to the hospital, Clara tried to stay calm, but the fear and uncertainty were overwhelming. She turned to Marietta, who had her eyes closed. "We're almost there, Marietta. Stay strong, please." Upon arriving at the hospital, the doctors acted quickly, taking Dona Marietta into the emergency room. Clara, still shaken, was directed to the reception, where she was asked about any family members. "She has no one, just me. No children, no close relatives," Clara responded, feeling the weight of responsibility. While waiting in the lobby, Clara couldn't stop thinking about how Dona Marietta's life might change after this event. She knew her friend didn't have many financial resources and was concerned about the future implications. But for now, her focus was on ensuring that Marietta received the best care possible. Finally, a doctor came out and informed her that Dona Marietta had suffered a heart attack, but fortunately, was stable after initial treatment. However, he mentioned that she would need to be hospitalized for monitoring and treatment. Clara felt an immediate sense of relief, but her concern quickly shifted to the future. She knew that Marietta lived on a limited income and feared how she would handle the medical expenses. She decided that, for now, the most important thing was that her friend was okay. One thing at a time, she thought, trying to stay calm. As Marietta was moved to her room, Clara stayed by her side, holding her hand, promising herself that she would do whatever it took to help her friend get through this difficult time. Little did she know that this event would trigger a series of revelations that would forever change Donna Marietta's life. Days in the hospital were difficult for Donna Marietta. The routine of exams and treatments was exhausting, but the care and concern from the healthcare professionals were comforting. Clara was always present, bringing little things from home to make the environment more welcoming. Her favorite blanket, a book of poetry, or even a jar of homemade soup, all to help her friend feel a bit more at home. Donna Marietta, on the other hand, spent her days reflecting on her life. The loneliness she felt was intensified by the absence of family, something that always troubled her. "I never thought growing old would be so lonely," she confessed to Clara one quiet afternoon, while leafing through a poetry book. "Sometimes, it's hard not to think about what could have been." Clara, sitting next to the bed, held Marietta's hand. "I know, Marietta, but you have me and all the neighbors who adore you. You're not as alone as you think," she said, trying to comfort her. Donna Marietta smiled, grateful for Clara's friendship. "You're a blessing in my life, Clara. I don't know what I'd do without you." There was a pause before Marietta continued with a heavy sigh. "But it's hard depending on others. I wish I could take care of myself." Tension rose when Clara brought an envelope delivered by the hospital. It was the bill for the medical services. Donna Marietta opened the document with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the pages with frighteningly high numbers. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized the total amount. "How am I going to pay for this?" she whispered, her eyes fixed on the paper. Clara, noticing her friend's concern, sat beside her, gently taking her hand. "Marietta will find a way," she said, trying to sound confident. "I know I don't have much, but we can pool what we have. You're not alone in this." Clara's offer of help was sincere, but Donna Marietta knew that both of them lived modestly. The thought of burdening her friend made her feel even more distressed. "I can't accept that, Clara. You already do so much for me," she responded, tears welling in her eyes. Clara insisted, her voice soft but firm. "You do the same for me. I'm not going to let you face this alone." Their friendship deepened with every word, and Donna Marietta felt a wave of profound gratitude. It was comforting to know that, even amid difficulties, she wasn't completely alone. In the following days, Clara and Donna Marietta discussed various options for dealing with the expenses. They talked about seeking help from charities, selling some belongings, or even organizing a fundraising event. "We could have a garage sale," Clara suggested, trying to find a practical solution. "I have some things at home we could sell, and I know you have some beautiful old clothes. They might fetch a good price." Donna Marietta nodded, still worried but recognizing the need to act. "Yes, I think we can try. I don't want to be a burden, and that might help a little." She looked at Clara with a weak smile. "But let's do it together, as we always do." Donna Marietta's physical recovery progressed, but the financial concern remained a constant burden. She struggled to stay positive, knowing that depression could further complicate her recovery. Clara continued to support her, always optimistic and determined to find a solution. "We'll get through this," Clara often said, her eyes shining with determination. One step at a time. The two friends faced the delicate moment together, strengthening their bond and discovering the depth of their love and mutual support. Clara, despite facing her own challenges, remained tireless in her support, demonstrating a generosity that touched the hearts of all who knew them. A few days after being discharged from the hospital, Donna Marietta returned to her modest home. The comfort of her home was a relief, though the financial worries still haunted her. Clara was always around, helping with daily chores and trying to cheer her up. The two women spent their afternoons talking and drinking tea, finding solace in each other's company. "It's so good to be home," Donna Marietta said, sighing with relief as she settled into her favorite armchair. "Though I still don't know how we're going to solve the issue of the medical expenses." Clara, preparing tea in the kitchen, tried to reassure her. "We'll find a way, Marietta. We always do." She brought the tea tray to the living room and poured 2 cups. "Besides, we have some ideas for the garage sale. Who knows what we might manage?" One sunny Saturday morning brought a sense of hope. Donna Marietta was sitting in her armchair, looking out the window when the doorbell rang. Clara, who was in the kitchen, went to answer. Standing at the door was a well-dressed man, around 40, with kind eyes but a seriousness in his expression that caught Clara's attention. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Clara asked, surprised by the unexpected visitor. "Good morning," the man replied with a slight smile. "I'm looking for Donna Marietta. Is she here?" Clara frowned, intrigued. "Yes, she's here. May I ask who's calling?" The man hesitated for a moment before answering. "My name is Andre. It's a personal matter." Clara looked at Andre curiously, but, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, decided to let him in. "Of course, come in. I'll go get her." As he entered the living room, Andre observed the simple and cozy environment. He felt a bit out of place, but at the same time, there was something comforting about the simplicity of Donna Marietta's home. Clara approached the armchair and, with a gentle smile, said, "Marietta, we have a visitor. A man named Andre wants to talk to you." Donna Marietta looked up, surprised. "Andre? I don't know any Andre." She slowly stood up, supporting herself with her cane, and walked into the living room. When she saw the man, she tried to recognize his face, but nothing seemed familiar. "Good morning, Donna Marietta," Andre said, with a nervous smile. "I know this is strange, but I need to talk to you. May I sit down?" "Of course," she replied, still confused. "Please have a seat." Clara sat down next to Marietta, curious to know what this well-dressed man wanted with her friend. "So, what brings you here?" Donna Marietta asked, trying to hide the uneasiness in her voice. Andre took a deep breath, as if preparing to say something important. "Donna Marietta, what I'm about to tell you may seem unbelievable, but it's the truth. I am your son." Silence filled the room. Donna Marietta froze, her mind unable to process the information. That's not possible," she murmured, her voice trembling. My son died shortly after birth. My parents buried him while I was in a coma." Andre, visibly emotional, nodded. "I know it seems impossible, but your parents lied. While you were in a coma, they decided to put me up for adoption. They thought it would be best, given how sick you were." Clara, still stunned, looked at Marietta, trying to imagine the whirlwind of emotions her friend must be feeling. "Marietta, could it be true?" she whispered, placing a hand on Marietta's shoulder. Donna Marietta took a deep breath, trying to absorb the revelation. "They always said you died. I cried for years. How is this possible?" She stared at Andre, searching for any resemblance, any familiar trait. Andre took out an old photograph from his wallet and showed it to Marietta. "This is a photo of my adoptive parents with me as a baby. I always knew I was adopted, but it's only recently that I gathered enough information to find you." Marietta took the photo with trembling hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can't believe my parents would do this to me, to you." The pain and disbelief were evident in her voice. Andre leaned forward, his expression full of compassion. "I didn't come here to cause pain. I just wanted to meet you, to know the truth. And if you'll allow it, I'd like to be part of your life, to make up for lost time." Donna Marietta looked at him, her heart heavy with a mix of sadness and hope. I need some time," she said, her voice breaking. "It's a lot to take in." Clara squeezed Marietta's hand, offering her silent support. "We're here for you, Marietta. And I believe this reunion could be a blessing in disguise." That afternoon was a whirlwind of emotions for everyone. As Andre said his goodbyes, promising to return soon, Donna Marietta felt the weight of a new reality. She didn't know what the future held, but something inside her, perhaps a spark of hope, began to light. The revelation of Andre left Dona Marietta in shock. His words echoed in her mind as she tried to grasp what was happening. Clara, by her side, placed a comforting hand on her friend's shoulder, trying to offer some solace. The room was thick with emotions, confusion, disbelief, and expectation. Andre, sensing his mother's difficulty in accepting the situation, decided to explain further. I know it's hard to believe, but everything you know about your son, about me, is a lie. When you gave birth, your health was in critical condition. While you were in a coma, your parents decided to put me up for adoption. Dona Marietta felt a mix of pain and disbelief. Her parents, who had always been loving and protective, were now gone. The idea that they could have lied about something so important left her heartbroken. But they told me you had died, that your body was too weak, you couldn't have survived, she said, her voice trembling. Andre nodded, understanding the weight of his words. They abandoned me. I was adopted by a family that raised me with great love and gave me every opportunity. But I always knew I was adopted, and I always had the desire to find my birth mother. Clara was visibly moved, struggling to hold back tears. Andre's story was heart-wrenching, a reflection of the complexities of life and the difficult decisions people sometimes have to make. "How did you find us?" she asked, curious about Andre's journey. "It was a long process," he replied, smiling slightly. "I had little information, but with the help of investigators and a lot of persistence, I was able to trace my origins. When I learned that you, Dona Marietta, had been hospitalized, I knew it was time to finally meet you." Dona Marietta looked at Andre, tears filling her eyes. You really are my son?" she murmured, still in disbelief. Andre only nodded, his expression understanding and emotional. She felt overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, sorrow for the deceit by her parents, the unexpected joy of finding a son she thought she had lost forever, and the fear of what this meant for the future. Everything seemed surreal, like living in a confusing dream. "I understand if you need time to process all this," Andre said gently. "I don't want to pressure you, but I needed you to know the truth, and if you'll allow it, I'd like to be a part of your life moving forward." Dona Marietta looked at him, a mixture of pain and hope in her gaze. I need time," she replied, her voice soft. "It's a lot to take in." Clara squeezed Marietta's hand, offering her silent support. "We're here for you, Marietta. And I believe this reunion could be a blessing in disguise." That afternoon was a whirlwind of emotions for everyone. As Andre left, promising to return soon, Dona Marietta felt the weight of a new reality. She wasn't sure what the future held, but something inside her, a flicker of hope, began to light. The days that followed were intense for Dona Marietta. Andre's revelation had stirred deep emotions, awakening memories and feelings she had buried long ago. Her conversations with Clara were essential in helping her process the flood of emotions. Clara, ever patient and caring, offered a listening ear and wise counsel. "It's strange, Clara," said Dona Marietta one morning as they drank tea on the porch. "It's like my whole life has turned upside down. Everything I thought I knew was wrong." Clara nodded, understanding. "I can't even imagine, Marietta, but maybe this is an opportunity to start over. To rebuild something you thought was lost." A week after the first meeting, Andre returned to Dona Marietta's house, this time carrying a photo album. "I want to show you this," he said with a shy smile as they sat in the small living room. Clara, respecting the intimate moment, opted to stay in the kitchen, preparing tea. Andre opened the album and began showing photos from his childhood. There were images of him with his adoptive parents, birthday parties, family trips. Each photo was proof of the love he had received over the years. "I had a good life," he explained, looking at his mother with gratitude. "I was loved and well cared for, but I always felt like a piece of my puzzle was missing." Dona Marietta carefully leafed through the album, tears filling her eyes. It was as if she were getting to know a part of the son she had never had the chance to see grow up. "They raised you well," she murmured, emotional. "But still, you wanted to find me." Andre nodded. "I always wanted to know who my birth mother was. When I grew older and learned about my adoption, I had a deep need to find you, to know where I came from. And now that we're here, I want to make up for lost time. Dona Marietta, emotional, took Andre's hand. I never knew the truth. My parents told me you had died, and I lived with that pain. But knowing you had a good life comforts me. And I'm so glad you're here now. Andre smiled, touched by his mother's sincerity. I'm glad to be here too. And, to be honest, I have another reason for this visit. He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. I want to help with your medical expenses. And more than that, I want to be present in your life from now on. Dona Marietta looked at Andre, surprised by the offer. I don't know what to say. It's such generosity. It's not generosity, Andre replied with a gentle smile. It's family. I want to take care of you as any son would take care of his mother. Andre's words touched Dona Marietta deeply. She felt a mix of relief and gratitude. Clara entered the room, bringing tea, and noticed the emotional atmosphere. It seems like things are going well here, she remarked with an encouraging smile. Yes, Dona Marietta replied, still holding Andre's hand. Very well, and I'm so grateful for that. From that moment on, the relationship between mother and son began to flourish. Andre started visiting Dona Marietta frequently, bringing small gifts, sharing stories from his life, and most importantly, offering his time and care. He also began to help financially, easing the burden of the hospital debt. Clara, always present, became a dear friend to Andre. Their late afternoon conversations, impromptu dinners, and mutual support strengthened the bond between the three of them. Dona Marietta watched with joy as the growing friendship between Clara and Andre unfolded, seeing in it a new beginning for all of them. As the months passed, Dona Marietta's life changed in surprising ways. Andre's constant presence brought new energy to her home. They spent more time together, getting to know each other better and sharing stories. Andre also brought practical changes, helping to renovate the house and make the space more comfortable for his mother. Clara continued to be a constant presence in Dona Marietta's life, but now her relationship with Andre had deepened. The three of them formed a small family, brought together by chance and love. Andre and Clara, in particular, began to grow closer in a special way. Their conversations became more intimate, and their walks around the town more frequent. It's funny how life can surprise you, Clara commented during one of those walks with Andre. I never imagined I'd find someone so special in a situation like this. Andre smiled, looking at Clara with affection. Life has a funny way of bringing people together. I never thought I'd find my mother and, on top of that, someone as wonderful as you. The two started spending more time together, and their bond became undeniable. Dona Marietta watched with a satisfied smile as a new love story blossomed. She encouraged the two to spend time together, happy to see her friend and her son finding happiness in each other. It was a serene love, built on friendship, respect, and mutual affection. One morning, as Clara prepared breakfast and Andre tended to the garden, Dona Marietta decided it was time to talk about the future. I've been thinking a lot, she began as the three sat at the kitchen table. And I think it's time we talk about what's next. Andre and Clara exchanged curious glances. What do you mean, Mom? Andre asked with an intrigued smile. Dona Marietta smiled, placing a hand on each of them. You two are the most beautiful thing that has happened in my life recently, and I couldn't be happier to see you together. So, I wanted to know, what are your plans for the future? Clara blushed slightly but smiled, holding Andre's hand. Well, Marietta, we were thinking about getting married, she said, her joy barely contained. Andre nodded, beaming. Yes, and we want you, Mom, to be by our side every step of the way. I want you to know that, no matter what, I will always take care of you. Dona Marietta's eyes filled with tears of happiness. That's wonderful. Nothing would make me happier than to see you two get married, and I'd be honored to be part of this new chapter. The wedding preparations began shortly after. It was a simple ceremony but full of meaning and love. Dona Marietta was the maid of honor, dressed in a beautiful blue gown, chosen lovingly by Clara and Andre. The ceremony was held in Dona Marietta's garden, with close friends and neighbors in attendance. Love and joy radiated from everyone present. During the reception, Dona Marietta, overcome with emotion, gave a short speech. I never imagined my life would take such an unexpected turn. But here we are, celebrating love and family. I'm so grateful to have met Clara and to have found my son again. You both have brought light into my life, and I look forward to seeing what the future holds. After the wedding, Andre and Clara decided to stay at Dona Marietta's house, renovating it to accommodate the new family. The house, once quiet and lonely, was now filled with laughter, conversation, and the sounds of neighborhood children playing in the garden. Dona Marietta, once worried about loneliness and financial difficulties, now lived surrounded by love and care. The difficult past was left behind, replaced by a new life full of hope and happiness. And so, the small house that had witnessed so many struggles became a home of love and new memories, proving that life can surprise you and offer second chances for happiness.